These identical twins recently made all the headlines with their extraordinary delivery. They gave birth on the exact same day, but that wasn't even what was so special about this event. Their mouths fell open in amazement when the doctor came with news. The doctor can still hardly believe it himself, but the news he brought these two women shocked the world. Twins give birth on the same day. What the doctor then discovers becomes global news. It all started when Janine Crawford picked up her phone, having received a message from her sister. It said that her twin sister had some happy news. She was, in fact, expecting a baby. Normally you would say that a sister would cheerfully call you after this to congratulate you, but Janine Crawford looked at her phone confused. How can my sister be pregnant? Janine looked at her own belly and called her sister. Hello, Nadia? Are you kidding me? Janine asked her sister. But Nadia was dead serious. The doctor recently confirmed she was just past her first trimester, and that was the time when you could share the good news with the world with reasonable certainty. Janine listened intently to her sister's story as she looked at the ultrasound photos of her own first trimester conversation. Nadia, I have to tell you something, Janine said over the phone to her sister. She explained that she herself had also had that conversation with her doctor yesterday and that there was a baby on the way. But you don't have a boyfriend at all, do you? Nadia asked her sister. It was indeed true that Janine did not have a boyfriend. She had been single for over 10 years and she was fine with that. Her sister, on the other hand, had had a faithful and sweet partner for over 5 years. They were happily married. Therefore, it was also a logical step to think about children. But then how did Janine get her pregnant belly? That was a question Sister Nadia also wanted to know. She had never heard of a new partner or a short-lived relationship where this could come from. Janine put the phone on speakerphone and began to explain. Meanwhile, Nadia's husband had entered the room and heard his wife starting to raise her voice on the phone. What the matter, honey? He asked her. Nadia told him that her sister was pregnant too, and of course this attracted her husband Dave's interest too. But she doesn't have a relationship, right? Dave asked in amazement. Nadia put her phone on speaker and placed it on the table. They started listening attentively to Janine. At that time, both of them didn't know that Dave had more to do with Janine's pregnancy than they ever expected. Indeed, Janine had been single and she still was. She had no desire to marry. Her life was perfect as it was. Well, almost perfect, because now that she had recently turned 32, her desire for children was starting to become more and more apparent. 6 months ago she had her first consultation with her doctor, and she told her that having children as a single parent was becoming increasingly easy to achieve. She could adopt, for example. There were plenty of children in poorer countries who would be greatly helped by such a kind mother. But Janine wanted something else. He wanted a child of her own flesh and blood. She was financially stable enough to support the child, and love would be plentiful anyway. The only thing missing was a partner with whom she could make the child. But modern science has thankfully come up with a solution to that these days, her doctor told her. But it is precisely the modern science that in Janine's case was going to disappoint her immensely. And it all had to do with her brother-in-law Dave. Dave didn't seem to know anything about it yet. He sat there with his wife Nadia listening to his sister-in-law's phone conversation. So you chose a donor? Dave's voice sounded through the speaker of her phone. Janine said yes, to which both Nadia and Dave shouted loud and enthusiastic congratulations. They totally understood why she chose this and thought Nadia would make a great mother, even if she had to do it alone. But thanks to one incredible discovery by her doctor, Janine would be far from alone. The months passed at lightning speed and the bellies of the two mothers-to-be grew at a rapid pace. They also found out along the way that they had the same doctor. Pregnant at the same time, the same doctor, and even about the same due date. The only difference between the two sisters seemed to be the child's father. Nadia with an intended pregnancy from her husband and Janine with an anonymous donor. But that didn't make the story any less wonderful. It was week 39 when Nadia reported that her waters had broken. Janine had some cramps, but was not yet ready to give birth. Dave prepared the car and the couple drove to the hospital, where the delivery was to take place. The room was prepared and Nadia couldn't wait to see her little boy born. However, her stay at the hospital took a long time, and after 18 hours she still did not have enough dilation. It almost seemed as if her baby was waiting for something. And what would soon become clear. Because after 7 p.m., the door to her room opened and a second bed was wheeled into the room. It was her sister Janine, who by now was also about to give birth. Her baby seemed to want to come much faster, and the two sisters' dilation was by now at the same level. It almost seemed like a competition, but one that neither woman needed to win. They both just wanted to see a beautiful, healthy baby boy. "Don't you mind not having a man with you to support you in childbirth?" Nadia asked her sister. And at that exact moment, Dave walked into the room. Dave had heard from the doctor that labor was about to begin at any moment. He just didn't expect Janine to be in the room as well. So, with a big teddy bear and a puzzled look, he entered the room. But that was not important for now, because both Janine and Nadia were allowed to go into labor. Labor from this point on went smoothly for both women. Nadia delivered first, and when she had her baby son lying quietly on her chest, Dave even held Janine's hand for a moment. This way, someone was still with her during this difficult moment. But not much later, both mothers would make a shocking discovery. Both mothers were lying quietly on their beds with their babies when the doctor came in. He was holding a notepad and looking rather nervously at the two women. "Which one of you is Janine?" the doctor asked. Janine raised her hand and waited to see what the doctor had to say. He walked over to her and briefly inspected the baby. Then he looked at Nadia's baby and scribbled something on his notepad. He looked at both mothers and also asked who the baby's father was. Nadia answered confidently with the name Dave. Janine explained that the man was anonymous, so she did not know him. But secretly she knew the father all too well. The nervous doctor walked out of the room at a brisk pace and told them he needed to run a few final tests. He would be back soon. The way he said this made Nadia and Janine uneasy. Was something going on with the babies? And why did he need to know who the fathers of our boys were? Questions that occupied the minds of both women. But questions that would all too soon be answered. And once the news broke, it would turn their world upside down. The doctor walked back into the room with a few other doctors, and Dave followed shortly behind. He had gone to get some drinks for the two ladies and had not seen this commotion coming. "What is going on here?" he asked the group of doctors who were busy talking among themselves. "Is your name Dave Maddow?" asked one of the doctors. "Yes," Dave replied, still smiling at the time, but that smile would soon pass him by. For then the doctors said the following: "We are so sorry. I think a big mistake has been made here." "Did you happen to donate to a donor bank in town about 10 years ago?" the doctor asked. Dave confirmed that this was true, but at the time didn't understand what it had to do with this situation. But although it took a moment for the seriousness of the situation to sink in with Dave, Janine's face went completely white. She looked from Dave to her own child and then to her sister's face. "You can't be serious? How is this possible?" Surely the doctor confirmed that this had happened. Normally, donations could never be made available to family members. This was to avoid this kind of situation, but apparently a big mistake was made at the clinic. "So I must hereby tell you that you have become the father not only of one child, but of two sons in this case." Dave dropped the drink from his hands and looked at both sisters in shock. "Oh my goodness, now what?" He said sorry to Janine maybe 100 times and then also noticed that the babies did look very much alike. Not surprising, of course, when you have identical twins having babies by the same man. But strangely enough, the shock was soon gone from both sisters' faces. Dave didn't understand what was going on. "What's going on? Why aren't you guys more panicked?" It was as if the sisters had telepathic gifts, for both appeared to be thinking exactly the same thing about this situation. Janine called Dave to her and said the following: "Basically, nothing changes. I still want to raise my child alone, and you will be a great father to my nephew. Nadia can be happy with you. And in a way, I am also very happy with you. Having an anonymous donor is practical. It's a transaction, and then you can do whatever you want, but you never know what kind of person the original father was. And thanks to you, I do know now. I know that my child's DNA came from an honorable and kind man. And I hope my son will have your character. And whether that is the case you will see on the next page. Both boys recently celebrated their 6th birthdays. And despite being very similar, they both have very different personalities. Ted, Nadia and Dave's son, is a quiet boy who loves reading and watching exciting movies with mom and dad. But George, Nadia's son, is a real rascal. He prefers to play outside all day, is headstrong and wants to become a fireman later. Traits that are like 2 drops of water to Dave's. And maybe you can already guess what Dave has as a profession. Fireman indeed.